Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, and we're back here on Wednesday morning to talk some Nebraska football spring practice. A lot of interesting stuff there happening with opening practice. We got some transfer portal movement with the basketball team finally adding to the roster instead of subtracting. So we'll cover all that. Before we get to that, if you haven't already, please do us the huge favor and subscribe to the channel. Please like the video, get into the comment section, and help everybody else out there find our content, which is for hardcore Husker fans. So Danny, how you doing on this Wednesday morning?
I'm doing good. I can't believe we're in the middle of April, and a lot of spring practice news coming out the last couple of days. A lot of different, moving parts in terms of the transfer portal, like you mentioned for basketball. So it's still busy, even though there's no season for football or basketball yet.
Yeah, it was fun on Tuesday. I don't know if you guys haven't seen the highlights, but there was some open practice for Nebraska. It was the second time that they've had a session open to the media. It's not the full practice. I think it was about 30, 40 minutes that they got to watch, but some interesting, planning there from Matt Rule. They basically were, came out and were doing some live, 11 on 11 stuff, some 2-minute drill. Danny Kalin, had some nice passes down the field. Dylan Raiola did too. I mean, he also had some misses, but obviously that's going to happen. All three quarterbacks I thought played well, but the thing that stuck out to me more than anything, and it's been kind of a theme ramping up, has been just the immense talent that Nebraska has in the wide receiver room. Ja'Cory Barney making big plays. I know you wrote about that yesterday at HuskerBigRed.com. But what were some things that stood out to you yesterday? Is just kind of watching, the highlights and video from open practice.
Don't sleep on Danny Kalin. We've talked about Dylan Raiola ad nauseum, and he's going to be a really good quarterback. But let's not forget about Danny Kalin. I mean, he looked really good in his throws that he made yesterday, and Nebraska is going to be in good hands when Raiola leaves for the NFL. So as long as they keep developing him and progressing him, then I think it should be not a seamless transition, but a relatively easy one once Raiola leaves. And I can't I can't remember the last time Nebraska's had a seamless transition at quarterback. Never mind one going highly ranked in the NFL draft. So we're in good hands in the quarterback room. And then, like you just mentioned, Ja'Cory Barney. I mean, he is electric. He is fast. He can make contested catches in tight windows. I mean, he may be on the smaller side, but man, he has speed. And I think, fans were excited when, Nebraska beat out the Miami Hurricanes for Barney. But, I don't think, they realized how, explosive he is. And I'm going to go on record here and say that he may be one of the best receivers of the 2024 class, if
Yeah,
not the best.
Yeah, he's definitely been making plays. He had, caught some passes from Kalin yesterday. He caught a long pass from Dylan Raiola, which they put in the spring league highlights the other day. I think that was Monday night that came out. So yeah, he's making plays down the field, but I mean, he's not the only one. I mean, Kalin threw to Jamal Banks, to Isaiah Nayor. Jalen Lloyd's been catching passes, Demetrius Bell. So I mean, this wide receiver group is loaded, and we've talked about how talented this quarterback room is. And yeah, Daniel Kalin is going to be off the charts. I mean, my concern is hopefully that Nebraska doesn't lose him eventually at some point. So, I mean, I think they're going to have to, if he's playing really well at some point, I mean, they're going to have to play him a little bit, whether that's, giving him a series that here or there. But, I think they're going to have to, kind of massage that situation a little bit to try to keep him here because, I mean, make no mistake, other teams, will be trying to lure him to the transfer portal with his ability, I think, down the road. But yeah, if they can keep him here for the entire time that Raiola's here, I think Nebraska's going to be set up extremely well at the quarterback position over the next 5 years. But truthfully, I mean, looking at this wide receiver group, I don't know that I've ever seen a Nebraska team with as much talent, at the wide receiver position as this group actually has going into this season. It's pretty impressive.
When you look at the wide receiver group from 5 years ago compared to now, the amount of talent on the roster in terms of the receiver position has increased, tenfold. And it's not just, the talent that they have, it's all the athletic skills that they bring to the table. And they're all very, very fast. And the coaching staff wanted to make that a point of emphasis in recruiting, and they have. And so it's been really fun to see, which receivers have stepped up. And, instead of, receivers thinking that they're going to immediately slide into the rotation, they're going to have to work for it. And that type of competition and position battles at the wide receiver position, I can't remember the last time Nebraska had one of those. So it's been really fun to see all these players, put on their, best show over the course of spring practice. And it's going to make for some interesting decisions come fall camp. And I think the starting wide receiver lineup might kind of be set already, in the sense that me and you could probably name who's gonna start once the season kicks off in August. But at the same time, one injury and it's who's going to be the next man up. And now Nebraska has a ton of options at wide receiver, and options that I don't know about you, but I feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with all of them, and I honestly I wouldn't worry about who's going to start because I think it's going to be, I think there's going to be guys flowing in. I think there's going to be 6, 7 receivers that are going to be flowing in and out. So I don't think who starts is even going to matter, to be honest with you, because the guys I think that'll get targeted probably the most are going to be Jamal Banks, Jalen. I think Banks and Jalen Lloyd are going to lead the team in targets. So I mean, whoever's starting, like I think those are the top 2 guys. I like Nayor too. Malachi Coleman's going to be in the mix, even though he's not out there now. And then, Demetrius Bell, I think, and Ja'Cory Barney are also going to have a role. And that doesn't even mention, Davon Hall, who's also played well, this spring. Garcia Castaneda, I think he's going to probably be more of the odd man out. But we'll see. I do think that all those guys are going to get opportunities, though. I mean,
What about a guy like Isaiah McMorris?
I know I mentioned him, but he's going to have to work his way into the mix. I think the fact that he didn't, that he wasn't there for the spring is going to, hold him back a little bit. But yeah, I mean, because you have Jaden Doss there too. So yeah, I wouldn't expect a huge impact from him. And I mean, honestly, I don't even Barney and Hall. I mean, I think that they'll make an impact. I mean, I think Barney will probably catch more passes than any of these guys, but I still don't think. I'd be surprised if he caught more than like 15 or 20 next year, just because, where all the other ball. I mean, I think Jamal Banks is probably going to lead the team in receptions, probably get, around like 50 or so. But I really think it's going to be, pretty spread out this year in terms of, targets and who's kind of getting the football, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. And, you look at, people or receivers that have visited already. Isaiah Mosey visited this past Saturday, 4-star 2025 wide receiver. So they're not slowing down at the position anytime soon. And they're focused on filling the position with talent. And I'll be interested to see who they bring in, because this room is getting crowded. So there's going to be decisions that have to be made. And, they're going to have to figure out where they need depth the most. And right now, receiver depth is not an issue. So, I'm just excited that we're having discussions on who can start and the depth and things like that. And, I think, like you said, this may be one of the more talented wide receiver rooms Nebraska's had in recent memory.
Yeah, and I think they don't need as many guys in this class, but 2 or 3. I mean, I think that I don't think you should ever really recruit based on your current roster. I just think you should try to recruit the most talented players that you can. And, Cortez Mills would still be, the guy up there. I've heard that Isaiah Mosey, I can't remember where he's kind of trending to, but it's not Nebraska. So I don't feel great about him. There's another one too. I can't remember who the other receiver is, but at any rate, I mean, I still think there's some solid options there, but Cortez Mills is still the guy that I'm pining for the most out of anybody in the 2025 class, because he probably could come in and play right away as a freshman, because I just think he's that good.
No, he is that good, and he's again, just like a lot of these receivers, explosive, can make things happen after the catch, good downfield threat. And so, I think that, as long as Nebraska keeps restocking the cupboard, they should be okay. When you look at, I'm trying to think of right now who's the other wide receiver that you're thinking of, because are you thinking of the guy from Missouri?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Whose name I can't remember either right now. It's just a testament to how much they want to surround their quarterbacks with good playmakers, and half of how a quarterback succeeds is because of good playmakers. And building the roster around your quarterback and building your roster around the strengths of your quarterback. So they're doing a nice job of that, and I'm excited to see how it all turns out.
Yeah, and it's they've shown a lot of highlights of the offense. I think it's harder to show highlights of the defense, but I think the defense is going to be really good, and I'm excited to see how they kind of handle things. It wouldn't surprise me if the defense, had a leg up during the spring game or whatever, depending how that works out. We haven't really heard anything on who's going to play where or how that's going to be divided up. I'm assuming it's going to be very similar to last season. At least I hope it is. I think that's the way to go. Treat it like an actual game, get the players in a game situation. But yeah, I feel really good about on all three levels of the defense for Nebraska. I think that they, have some really promising talent and depth, and yeah, this team should be. I mean, there was a thing that we've talked about that before, but Nebraska has 19 starters coming back. I mean, I think they're tied for third. And that really, I mean, on the defensive side of the ball, even goes beyond that, I think, because they have guys who didn't necessarily start, but who played quite a bit last year, who were coming back, a lot of young guys. And offensively, I mean, it's a lot of the same guys. Plus, you add, Dylan Raiola, Dante Dowdell, who I think has some work to do. I think Emmett Johnson. If we were playing a football game right now, I think Emmett Johnson would be the starting running back. And again, we talked about this too. It seems like Matt Rule always has, harsh things to say about incoming transfers, and maybe they do just have a tough time adjusting to, what Nebraska is doing. I'm not sure, but I think part of that is planned to
Yeah.
not ruffle feathers with the players on the current roster too, and which is smart. I mean, everything Matt Rule does, he does for a reason.
And quite honestly, I'm not exactly mad about Dowdell's slow start, only because I want Emma Johnson to stay. I figured if Dowdell started off really hot, then that may lean Johnson towards the portal. But for now, everything looks good in the running back room, and I would love if Johnson, Emmett Johnson was a member of the team come the fall.
Yeah, I mean, he was really good last year, and like I said, I mean, I don't think he's going to find a better situation than he's going to have at Nebraska, because even if whoever starts, like either one of them is going to get, they both are probably going to average over 10 carries a game. That would be my prediction. I don't see, even if Dowdell starts or Johnson starts, I don't see either of them getting like 20 carries a game. I think it's going to be, kind of like we saw last year. And it'll just be, Emmett Johnson, who was good down the stretch, just will have somebody else he can actually kind of share the load with. Gabe Urban can get in that mix too, and I think that's the best way to go about it. I don't think you need to give one guy the ball 300 times a season. I just think that's it's just tough to have that person stay healthy and then be productive through an entire Big Ten season. I mean, look at Anthony Grant like 2 years ago. They fed him the ball because they didn't have any other option, and he had like 200 carries and couldn't make it. And then last year wasn't really the same. So, I really think spreading those carries out is the way to go. And I'm really not that worried about Emmett Johnson leaving in the portal. And it's always easy to say, and guys, that spring portal, but it never to see. It always seems to me like the hype and what the reporters try to drum up and say about all these guys leaving just never really happens as much. And I don't know, I feel like most of the time guys that are leaving in the spring, that they are just, it's usually running away for depth chart purposes. So it's like there are some good players that are going to be coming into the portal, like a few, like in NFL free agency, but everybody that's going into the portal right now in the spring is doing it for a reason. I mean, that's just something, in my opinion, to keep in mind. And maybe it's for a payday somewhere else, but most of the time it's because they couldn't get on the field where they're currently at. So you have to be careful getting those types of players, in my opinion.
You have to wonder how AJ Allen would have fared in this room by now, or where he would have sat. Because, granted, he played at Miami a bit last year, but that running back room is loaded. And so, with the injuries to the running back position last year, we could have really used Allen. It's easy to look back and say all these things now, but it's just a cautionary tale that maybe the grass is not always greener in terms of playing time.
Yeah, and who knows exactly why he left. I mean, it seemed like he didn't, it had to do with the running backs coach too, too. So,
Applewhite, yeah.
yeah. But I mean, yeah, I do think he would be the starter right now, but that's, it is what it is. I do think that they're in a good spot. I mean, I would like, hopefully they can land Jamarian Parker in this class, and that'll give them, with Connor Booth, that'll give them a couple of running backs. It'd be nice to actually see them sign multiple running backs in a class, which is something they haven't done under Matt Rule yet, which is kind of interesting. It's usually a position where you sign multiple guys just kind of, out of necessity. You just usually need that many dudes running the football because, like I said, I mean, they get hurt. But at any rate, I think they've got a bunch of projections for him. I know USC in terms of Parker, USC's in the mix, Alabama, but really feels like a commitment's coming this summer from Jamarian Parker.
Yeah, and I think last year they wanted to see what they could get out of Gabe Irvin and Ramir Johnson, and unfortunately the health of both came into play. And now that they realize that they really need to, get another running back and try to continue to stockpile the room, because as we saw last September, once the injuries happen at the position, the depth becomes a major issue. And granted, that opened the door for Emmett Johnson last year, but it still wasn't an easy situation to deal with. And yeah, landing Parker would be huge. And Parker is an absolute beast. He can run north, south, east, west. Accelerate really well, get to the second level really well. So I'd be really excited to have him in a Nebraska uniform.
Yeah, for sure. It would be a lot of fun. I mean, he's a legit, SEC talent, and yeah, it definitely seems like it's going that direction. So, in terms of the basketball team, there was some positive movement this week with Andrew Morgan from North Dakota State committing to Nebraska. That happened on Monday after we did our show. So,
Always does.
6'9" forward, 6'10", I guess, depending on where he's listed. Averaged I think just under 13 points a game, a little over 5 rebounds, but averaged more than 2 offensive rebounds every season. Is an effective low post scorer, shoots 35% from 3-point range, although he didn't shoot a ton of threes. But what are your thoughts on Andrew Morgan and how he kind of fits onto this team?
Well, I feel like he's a rink mass replacement, don't you?
I think they could play together. I don't necessarily think he's a rank mass replacement. I do worry about that. He's very similar to Rink Mast, and
He has almost the exact same build, which made me a little kind of worried that he would be a mass replacement. I mean, I don't know. We'll see, but to me, the alarm bells were kind of sounding off as it in regards to mass staying. I don't know if like you had the same vibe from it, but to me, that's kind of what I meant. I don't know though.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that that's a possibility, which would hurt Nebraska for sure. But I mean, yeah, and I just think like I think I mentioned this, but I mean, he's a good player. I do think he'll fit well, but the idea of landing, like another all Big Ten player from the transfer portal is probably not likely. I mean, I think that people need to, kind of set expectations on that. Where Rink Mass was really, really good. I mean, I do like that Morgan. He shoots the pick and pop very well. He's really good in the catch and shoot, kind of like Rink Mast. He even mentioned that they showed him a lot of Rink Mast, kind of highlights and stuff. That being said, I do think that they could play together. So I'm not certain that Rank Mass is leaving yet. And the way I look at it is, it would just give Nebraska another guy who could basically shoot in the pick and pop. I mean, you think about last year when they had Brink Mass and Josiah Leak on the floor together. I mean, Josiah really wasn't, he couldn't stretch the floor. He wasn't a very good shooter. He really couldn't make much outside the paint. Not that you want to shoot anything outside the paint, really. That's not a 3-pointer. And Morgan really doesn't do that. Shoots mostly shots, around the rim, around the paint. And then, yeah, he's deadly on that pick and pop. So I do think it would be, if they did have both of them, they could put a lot of stress on the defense, and I think they could play together. I mean, Wisconsin has, like 4 bigs that do the same damn thing. So I do think
Yeah.
they could fit. But yeah, it does worry me a little bit about, him coming back. And like I said, nothing's a sure thing until they make their announcement. And I did think it was curious that he didn't announce the same time as, Gary and Bryce Williams.
And when you talk about Morgan, he does struggle at the free throw line a little bit, but he shot 70% last season, which was improvement from the season before. So, I mean, there he is continuing to improve. I believe he made the Summit League All Second team. So, he's definitely a solid player, and I'm wondering how exactly he'll fit, especially if Mass stays, and what his role will be if Mass leaves, and what has been a wave of transferring out with 6 total players. Getting Morgan was a nice kind of way to stop the bleeding.
Yeah, and so here's something else. If that could factor into it with other targets. According to Jamie Shaw of on3.com, with William Kyle, who's another guy that we've mentioned.
Yep.
Nebraska is a school to watch, the team to watch here. He's taking visits to Iowa State, where he's going to. But Nebraska's a team to watch there. So, I mean, if they get William Kyle, that probably would tell me that maybe Rink Mass is on the way out. But still, I mean, you still need front court depth. You need more than two big guys in the Big Ten, and that's all Nebraska has right now is two. So, I mean, yeah, I realize that, Juwan Gary and Bryce Williams can play the 3-4, but like you need actual big guys. So I mean, outside of, and the reason I say Nebraska doesn't have any is just because Rink Mast hasn't confirmed himself on the roster. So
Right.
To me, but Rink Mast, say Rink Mast is gone. If you get Andrew Morgan and William Kyle, that's still not enough. You still need more big guys. So they definitely could all play and fit together. And William Kyle was the Summit Defensive Player of the Year. So I would have, if I had my choice, I would take him over Andrew Morgan, to be honest. And he's a guy that scores a lot. He doesn't shoot threes, though.
Yeah, no,
So,
I totally agree with you there. And also, Nebraska is meeting with Rutgers guard Gavin Griffiths coming on Friday. And, Griffiths, he played in 32 games last season for the Scarlet Knights. He started in 3 of them. He averaged 5.8 points in 17 minutes per game. And he made 31 3-pointers for the Scarlet Knights, which was second on the team. And so, when you look at, guard depth and how much we need guard depth, I think Griffiths is a key player to watch. He's a former 4-star. So I'll be interested to see how the visit on Friday goes. And, he's a guy that I would really want. And, because he can score in bunches. I mean, when you take a look at what he was able to do, later in the season, he scored 16 points against Maryland in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, 10 points against Nebraska when those two teams played on March 3rd. And then, 14 points against Wisconsin, the game after Nebraska. So he can put up points in bunches. He made the most of his minutes, and he's a guy that I would really want and who I'm going to watch and, pay close attention to his visit on Friday.
Yeah, he'd be a good shooter. He'd be a nice piece to have. Could probably start. Nebraska needs. They need guards. They need a point guard. They need a 2 guard. They really don't have. Yeah, they really don't have anybody. Unless you're starting Bryce Williams again. But I'd rather. Even so, they need some guy. Because like right now, talking about putting Rink Mass in the pick and roll. Who you putting him with right now? Because Nebraska doesn't have a single playmaking guard on its roster right now. So
Right.
and that's not an insult to Sam Hoiberg or anything, but you're not drawing up ball screen plays for Sam Hoiberg. That's just not his game.
No,
He's not a shot creator.
No, he's more of a defender, which is fine. He's a very good defender. He's a very good scrappy player, but you still need a shot creator.
So if you look at it, it's if Rink does leave, then you could say that Andrew Morgan is a replacement for him, and that William Kyle is a replacement for Josiah Leak. But that to me, that's probably if that's even or if that's a push, then you're like that's very optimistic for Nebraska. I would say that would be a downgrade off of last season, and then you lose Keisei Tominaga, who's one of the best scorers in program history. So there's work to do on this roster to try to get them back to where they were last year, and there's a lot of work to do. And I know that Fred knows that, but like Gavin Griffiths would be nice, and he's a good piece. He's capable of starting. I think he's more capable of doing more things than he showed last season with Rutgers. I think he could make a lot of 3-pointers for Nebraska. But is he Keisei Tominaga? I'm not sure about that. And then you still have to find a point guard. I know they've got Aaron Eulis, but I'm not sure if you can count on that situation. And truth be told, he only averaged like 6 points a game, the last time he played at Iowa. So they really need to go find like a dynamic, shot creator, and somebody who can kind of get things going from that point guard position and who can run the ball screens. Because what good is it to have Rink Mast and Andrew Morgan who can hit the pick and pop if you don't have anybody that you can run in that play with them? So that's my focus. I'm not trying to cause any panic or anything. I'm just trying to give a realistic idea of where the roster is now. You add a few pieces and it can obviously change. And Fred knows this better than anybody. And I would say that the one thing I feel good about is Fred can find talent, and he knows how to develop it too. So I think he'll get some nice pieces, but there's plenty of work to do.
I mean, what he's done this build at Nebraska, these rebuilds, 3 times now?
Well, you're rebuilding your team every year in college basketball anymore, so
True,
that's just how it is.
true.
That's every program.
But I mean, I guess builds that work, I'd say the last 2 years. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. He does have a knack, Hoiberg does, for identifying talent and, finding players that fit his system. So I'm very interested to see what this roster will look like by the time, next season opens up. And, Nebraska's been in contact with a lot of recruits and they're meeting with a lot of players, but, we'll see. We'll see how everything shakes out. And, I don't think we'll have the success maybe that we have last season, but at the same time, I believe this team will be competitive in the Big Ten, and who knows, maybe they can make a run, next March.
Yeah, and I just think, like if you take a guy like Gavin Griffiths, just would be, Fred Hoiberg would make him a much better player, and Rutgers is like the worst offensive team in, major college basketball. They just run a terrible system, and he only attempted 3.4 3-pointers per game, that's not very many, and he shot 28%, but you see that happen a lot with guys that they're low volume shooters. I mean, sometimes it takes getting into that rhythm, and so I feel like with Fred's coaching for one thing, and coaching of shooting, which I think is one of his strengths, I really think that Griffiths could be a guy that could score in double figures, and then you put him next to playmaking point guard, and and with Sam Hoiberg and Janowski coming off the bench, that's kind of you have a nice backcourt there. There's also Connor Hickman, I think is his name, from Bradley.
Yep.
Would be another nice guy to get. And anyway, Fred Hoiberg can find 3-point shooters, so I know that they'll definitely have plenty of those on the roster next year.
Yeah, for sure, and it's such an integral part of the game now, maybe even more so than 10 or 15 years ago. And I think Fred does a good job of finding players that fit his system and fit the type of basketball that he wants to run. So I'm confident with this coaching staff that they'll be able to execute this build. It's just a matter of putting all the pieces together and making sure that they complement each other well.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys can follow along with Build at HuskerBigRed.com. We'll have all your information. You can follow along here at the podcast too. We'll have updates with all of our episodes. But definitely keep following on the X. There's lots of things happening with the transfer portal on social media. And like I said, we've got it covered on the website too. So we'll wrap it up there, you guys. Thanks for joining us for another episode. If you haven't, please do us the favor of hitting the subscribe button, hit the like button, enter your comments, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.